is 19.9. We have 17% of our students on IEPs or 504, so it's some kind of special education services. We are now at 50% free and reduced lunch. Not sure if that's really an increase or that's just that we really made a concerted effort to make sure we captured all of those students. And we sent out, I believe we all did, sent out a message to parents in the beginning of the year when we get that information, encouraging them to fill out the forms and apply, even if they didn't want to take advantage, because the state subsidy is greater for low socioeconomic students, that's a financial gain for us. So we have 24 and a half regular ed classroom teachers, 3 specialists, 3 special education teachers, our school counselor. We do have a district special education program. We house the functional life skills program for grades 4 through 8, which actually we even have a 3rd grader this year because the age span worked. But so we have that program. We have a part-time social worker who's with us about a day and a half a week, the rest of the time at Whittier. And then our 1 shared gate teacher, gifted and talented, that's across the K-8 programs. We have 11 special ed techs. 4 of those are part of the functional life skills program. So that's a majority going there. We have 6.5 regular ed. 3 of those are Title I. 1.5 are in the pre-K, and so we have 2 other ed techs that help us with interventions. And then an assistant and myself.
Brett, how many students are in the life skills program?
9.
9. And the students come from all 3 towns, you said?
Correct. Yep.
With one very quick question,
Yeah.
am I right? The pre-K program that you have listed here, 6.5 regular ed, and then it has pre-K and the parenthetical. That is what some people call the 4-year-old program.
Yes, the 4-year-old program. Yep. And that is, yeah, those all fall under regular education. Those aren't, the title services aren't special education, nor are those pre-K.
Right.
Okay.
When you talk about specialists, you're talking about gym, music, art?
Yeah, gym, music, art. We have a library, ed tech. All the schools have an ed tech as their librarian. We have a certified teacher librarian at the high school who oversees all of the elementary programs.
Oh, right here. I might be able to do it right. Oh, then I lose that.
And thank you. That was actually, that round worked really perfectly, that you guys jump in with questions. Whenever you have it, just jump right in. I'm fine with that. So we'll go on to the actual budget, the number stuff. I'll do my best to lead us down through, because I know it can get confusing with all the numbers. More likely than not, I am going to go in order, and I'm going to try to refer to the description rather than numbers, because I think that's easier for people to follow. And just kind of comment on things where there are changes that I want to make sure I draw your attention to. Because as Tina had said, this is a maintenance of effort. This is just to maintain what we have. There's nothing added, nothing new. This is just what we already do.
And what I will do is, I know you can't see this well, because I can't see it, and I'm a lot closer than you are. I can't figure out unless we move this back. It's not, we don't have a lot of room to make it larger. But what I will do is, if you're having trouble finding something, I will point or highlight and say it's in the yellow section or it's in the purple section. So if you do need to, I will try to point up here so you have a little bit of guidance to where Rick's talking about.
Okay. Just the very first line, the guidance counselor, social worker salary, that's a 6% increase. What happened when the new contract was negotiated with teachers, we had some teachers who were misplaced, so underpaid on a common scale. So you will see across the board, at the elementary level, for the most part, there are larger increases than the 3% that Tina talked about. when they get to the high school and some middle school, I think, you're probably going to see less than a 3% increase in their salaries. So that's the overall picture. So the guidance counselor is getting more than 3%. So, and that's a contractual thing. So we'll move down the list. We'll skip down, I don't know, probably 4 lines. The stipends.
Sorry, can you just
Sure.
explain what MSR is?
Main state retirement,
Thank you.
sorry. So your salary goes up, your main state retirement goes up. So we're gonna see that on really all the lines, the teacher lines, any of those. And if there are any questions, if I skip over anything and you wanna know, jump right in. So stipends was the next thing that I was gonna just mention really quickly. Again, that was a contractual change. It's not a huge amount of money, but you know, percentage-wise, just want to make sure people knew. Then the next line is the aide salary. So we're going to skip down a few more. Aide salary, that is my library tech. On our support staff contracts, there's actually two things that impact their salaries. They're generally in 3-year bands for their pay scale. And so when they hit, you know, that next level of experience, then there's a more substantial jump in their salary. And so my librarian hit that jump in addition to the overall contract increases, pay increases across the board. So that's why that one jumped up more in there. The next couple lines down, software-related repairs and maintenance. That line covers the library program, you know, the program that they use to check books in and out and all of that, the software piece of that. The other thing that we found out, the reason that's an increase is because we found out this year that we've been violating, across the board, we've been violating copyright law when we show movies to our large groups of students. So the $400 increase there is to pay for that copyright license, and that you'll see in the other buildings as well. Couple more lines down, books. Again, those are books for our library. And across the elementary schools, we've budgeted $15 per student for our libraries to support those books for our kids. There's a next big chunk that is all technology that really Linda will touch on. The only thing, I don't know, it's probably 10 or 15 lines down, technology-related hardware.
Yes, a 384% increase?
Yes.
Yes, that one, good.
So that one I can at least touch on. That is the laptop cart that we talked about. A laptop cart with 22 machines on it to purchase is $26,004. And again, that is, our machines are getting old, and you know, just to maintain, things are starting to die. So we need at least one to maintain what we're doing.
So it's basically enough laptops for a classroom. I mean, they rotate,
Yes.
all
Yeah.
classrooms use them, but it's so
Yeah.
that.
And we picked
an entire
22
class.
because that is, right now, that is my largest class. There's always potential we could have a group that there's more kids than that, and
Or have a laptop down.
yeah. So, but, you know, that's what we'll budget for, and that's what we'll have in there. And the next line's related, really, when you look at the technology-related software. If you're going to have new hardware, you need some new software. So that kind of ties into that. But again, Linda really will touch on the technology aspect of that. So the next big chunk, is it the yellow? I'm trying to fill in
Right
your
here in the
colors.
brownish color?
The brownish.
Yes.
Okay.
And I've
So-
got this highlighted for you. You'll see the elementary
So
principal.
the brownish chunk that's the administrative. So that's running the main office and all of that part. So there's the, you know, our salaries are all in there. The lines to draw your attention to, Elementary principal tuition, we cut out a course. So one fewer class is going to save us some money there. Purchase professional services in there. What we had done, we moved that to regular instruction, because what we had done is our student services, some of the things that kids got as a paid professional service were in that line, and so that was misplaced. Really, that if a paid professional service under administration would be something that we would benefit from. So the administrators, if we brought in, I don't know, a coach for the principals to be better principals, that would go in that line. But, so that's why it's zeroed out, because we're perfect. All right, employee training and development, we did leave it flat, but you'll see that compared to the other two elementary schools, that is a little bit more than them. And that is because Kelly became full-time assistant at PCS this past year. So all of those monies that were split between PCS and Whittier, there are a lot of those things that are solely in PCS now. Training and development, employee training and development. No, that's what I just touched on. Okay. Postage. So this is all the stuff that we mail out of the office. One of the things that changed this year is our postage meter died, and now that we got a new one, there is a rental fee now that goes with the new ones that you get. So there's a rental fee, and as well, last year I had cut about $1,500 out of that line because I thought that was more accurate as to what we needed. I cut too deep, so we've had to shift some money this year just to cover that postage. So, telephone, again, those are for the cell phones, and again, that money gets transferred over from Whittier having Kelly full-time. Employee travel, again, her travel expenses are all PCS now, so that's why there's a small increase, $200 increase there. And then general supplies, I had under general supplies part of I had food for our professional development in that line, which again was misplaced. So that is moved into the teacher areas rather than administration. What else? Dues and fees. Sorry, that's the last line under admin. And again, full-time assistant principal. So I have all those dues now come out of my line.
So we'll expect to see the corresponding decrease in the Whittier budget then?
I would assume. I haven't looked at Whittier's budget, so.
Presumably.
Okay. Continuing down through, the next chunk of lines really falls under the maintenance of the building. So it's general things to run the building or custodial.
And that will be covered by Gary or Kim, I believe.
Yes.
The thing that I would draw some attention to as we go down through under the salaries for the custodians, the next line, substitutes. Part of the increase in that line is to help cover the plowing. The guys right now, when they plow, obviously that takes their hours, and then if they're not there during the day, we need a sub for them to cover the regular custodial duties because they spend all night plowing.
Rick, could you go back up a couple lines for
Sure.
a second? Equipment and furniture, there's a decent decrease there. I'm just wondering, is that something that was purchased last year?
Yes,
Doesn't need to be
good.
purchased this year?
And thank you for noticing that, because I did have a note and I missed it. We had 2 years ago, we added the halftime pre-K. Last year, we had to add another 4th grade because of our enrollment numbers. And those both required some additional furniture.
Yep.
So those things are covered now. You'll see in my priority list, because the kindergarten is large, and Tina already touched on it, because our kindergarten class is large, we will probably need another first grade teacher. And if we do that, then we might need to make another adjustment in the furniture, just mainly to convert a room over to a classroom. I think we've got enough things like the desks and chairs for the most part, but things like whiteboards and bulletin boards and, those are the kind of things that, we would need to add into that furniture line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now you have, I'm sorry.
Sure.
You have telephone in 2 places.
Yeah.
Underneath postage up there and then underneath the insurance.
Yes, the upper line, the top one, the telephone, those are the cell phones for the administrators. And the telephone down in that line is the landlines for the building.
This is the administrative.
And one other thing that you're going to notice, Rick was sharing that his phone lines went up because Kelly is now full-time there. But they also, all of them are going to go up around $120 because we've added a hotspot on every principal's phone, which is it $10 a month, I think? $10 a month. For emergency purposes. So if they're off-site, they don't have access to the student rosters and parent information numbers, and so a hotspot on their phone means that we have a safety. If we don't have them, we have a safety problem. So we've added those this year for everybody in their phone line. So you will see an increase in, if you look at the principal's line, there'll be $120 increase in every one of our principals.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we feel lucky. I mean, we haven't had to deal with that yet, but just the thought of it, any evacuation processes, if we move off-site, there may not be Wi-Fi there. If there's no Wi-Fi, our staff won't be able to log in and get all that student information to help us with dismissal, parent contacts.
And Elm Street went a week without any internet this year with Fairpoint strike. So that's a big hardship, and it made us realize that we are really in a difficult situation if you can't access our parent emergency information.
It was actually 9 days to
Oh,
clarify.
sorry.
Not that I was counting.
You can see it wasn't quite as painful for me as it was for Ryan.
Yeah.
It brings us back to that idea of, technology is great when it works, and when it's out, it can make us struggle. All right, the next series. So it's
pink.
you have it all in pink.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, this is all under the regular instruction, but you're going to see some things appear a couple times because it is broken out. The state breaks it out by 3 to 6 instruction, so grades 3 through 6, K to 2, and then the 4-year-old or pre-K program is also separate. So in the next series, so what Tina has up there in pink, you're going to see like teacher salaries 3 times. We're not paying them 3 times. It's different groups of people.
And if I can add in to help you with the numbers, if you look at your number at the beginning, the 1,000s are always consistent. It's the next line that tells you what the grade level is. So the 1,100s are your 3 to 6. And when you get down to your 1,120s, it's your K to 2. And then your 1,122 is your pre-K. Yeah, if you're not used to looking at these numbers can be confusing. And you'll see that on every single elementary budget. So it is helpful to know how those shift and why. Again, you might see phones in 2 or 3 different places, or you might see salaries in 2 or 3 different
And that's
places.
so that the data here rolls up into the state report?
The state, they require us to set it up like this.
So on page 2 at the bottom, and you have salaries, like for teacher salary up 6%, ed tech salary 2%, but then under benefits, it has teachers' benefits up 14%. So can you speak to
Yes.
the same with the ed tech?
Yep.
Thanks.
So I'll try to go down by line.
Okay.
But then when we get there, I think I had kind of anticipated answering that question too.
Okay.
So So under the 3 to 6, so the teacher's salary, again, up 6%, we talked about that makes a difference. So under teacher benefits and then ed tech benefits, so the teacher benefits under there is up 14%, ed tech benefits up 15%. So there are a couple, actually there are probably 3 factors. One, we planned on an increase in the benefits in those costs for insurance anyway. There was a 5% increase. Second thing that plays a role is if you change staff, then they might take, then a new staff member may take insurance where an old one did not. And if that changes, then that's going to increase that. I mean, you could also see a decrease, theoretically. We don't often, usually new staff enroll in the benefits. And then I think the last piece of that under the benefits is, which Tina spoke to already, under Obamacare, where adult children are now able to be under their parents' insurance for a longer period. We've had quite a few people who have taken us up on that. And a majority of that cost falls on the district because it is one of the benefits we have.
So was this based on, are you negative now in your line, or how did you base like the quantities? Like you said, the 5% for the insurance, that
Right.
makes sense. But then, how do you guesstimate whether someone's going to take the insurance or not? Is there a formula, or do you just kind of?
No, it's based on current.
Yeah.
It's based on our actual right now. So, yeah. So next year, if we had a changeover in staff, potentially we could use less of that money.
Right.
We could need more.
Right.
And then, that ultimately ends up being stuff that, we need to figure out. Either we shift or we shift at a district level. So, if I have an increase in benefits, but mine it has a decrease, then we may shift some of the money that way.
Okay.
And we have open enrollment in May, which isn't very helpful with budgeting because that's the way the process works. So we estimate, and you assume that there'll be some people who, maybe a child will be going off their insurance because they're over 26, or they might have a change in job of a spouse or something like that. But we always have that challenge, and that's why at almost every board meeting when we're having conversations about the financials, we say, and if there's a change in benefits, it's because the person has, either a new person has come in and taken different benefits, or it was because in May somebody enrolled that hadn't before.
And isn't it right around May that we get the actual percentage for our healthcare change? So
It was in April last year.
yeah. Okay. So moving down along, I know maybe Wendy or Tina can speak to the ed tech retirement, an increase of 27%. I don't know if that's again, a staffing
Right,
change.
the retirement is
Okay.
2.65% of the salary.
Okay.
So if the salary went up, the Main State retirement went up.
Did everybody hear that? So, yeah, so when the salaries change, the retirement changes. So, again, for those of you who weren't part of our negotiations process or our board meetings, we've really struggled with our ed tech hirings. We've got a bunch of positions unfilled because we were $3 and $4 per hour less than the surrounding areas. So our ed tech 2s and 3s got a raise that was, did we do 75 cents? So that was about a 4.7% raise because we can't fill the positions and keep them, and by law we have to have meet the needs of the IEP. So the ed techs got a bigger raise, and other staff who are closer to the regional average got very little raise, or a minor raise. And so again, the ed tech line would be the one that you see the biggest impact.
So next line to touch on, purchase professional services. That's where some of the food got moved from, that was under the administrative purchase professional services. As well, there was an increase in the cost of our Ferry Beach, the ecology school program, in the K-5 program, and We lost funding, I'm not sure if you all remember, but we lost some of the support from Poland Spring last year that paid for our 6th grade. So that happened last year, too late in the process to add it to last year's budget. In our PTAs, all of the PTAs and community clubs stepped up and helped cover that for this year, but that's not sustainable for them. It was $10,000. So we have included some of that cost in our budgets.
How much of the 10,000 is in there, do you remember, Rick?
Between
The 3 schools?
The 3 schools, $4,000.
Okay. So you'll be still looking to fundraise for 6,000 of it
Yeah,
with
yeah,
support.
we didn't, take that all away. They're still going to, they're going to support us through that, but. Okay, employee training and development, down quite a lot. There are a couple things in the training and development that we have our, well, one is very positive. One is our Wednesday work, that we're able to do a lot more on Wednesday afternoons. Even just having that additional hour has made a big difference for us. And we're also hoping that some of those costs we may be able to shift into Title II.
And again, just to clarify, for those who might not have kids in the system, that the Wednesday work you're referring to is because the school now gets out an hour earlier
Right.
on Wednesday's early release for professional development for the teachers.
Yeah, and what we actually have, because in the contract, there's 90 minutes of, well, 60 or 90, of uncompensated time that they have to put in. So they don't get paid for that extra hour to hour and a half. And that hour that they get out early is just considered a part of what would be a regular length school day. So we have a 2.5 hour block of time that we work with our teachers every Wednesday, looking at student work, looking at curriculum. So it's been huge. Next line, tuition to charter schools. Again, Tina talked about that, that was hopefully reformulated at the state level and will no longer be a line that we have to pay for. Instructional supplies. So you see for me that's down 20%, about $7,000. What I ended up cutting out of there, we've been supporting our teachers with books for their classroom libraries. So we cut that, all of us cut that about in half. What we were doing there, cut out replacing some classroom meeting rugs. So really just tightened up that line as much as possible. Next line, books, that's up 13%. And those are actually for like teacher interventions. So those are part of the schedule at Poland Community School now. 4 times a week we have a half an hour built in the schedule where every child receives some kind of intervention. So it can be extension opportunities. So sometimes that includes things like gifted and talented, but it also includes things like our title services. And I mean, I guess thinking about that, a lot of times when you think about interventions, the kids on the extremes get those interventions. GATE kids, maybe special ed students or Title I students, so really low or really high, get the interventions, and the kids in the middle don't get anything different. So that's part of why we put that in our schedule, so that every kid really is getting what they need during that block of time. But in order to support that, we needed to have some more like multiple copies of books so that they could run some groups out of that. Cost of trip transportation, just an increase in maybe the way we were formulating. We were getting charged just for, I guess, the gas previously, but now we're also helping to kick in towards the cost of the driver, which makes sense. So there's an increase there in that.
So is that actually just a cost shifting of, instead of it being in the overall transportation budget because it's PCS kids, you're putting it in, going on a field trip, you're
Right.
putting it in your budget
Right.
instead of the general
Yeah.
transportation.
Teacher salaries, again, up 5%, and again, that's the difference, because it depends if they were substantially off their, where they should be on the scale, so there were fewer people there. Teacher benefits, again, some staffing changes, you know, when new people come in and they take those benefits, it increased that cost. Purchase professional services, we did not have a line, everything was in, previously in our 3 to 6. So we didn't have a separate line for the purchase professional services, and that covers, again, Ferry Beach programming, food for professional development, that went in there.
So is that a shift from a different line, or is that a new?
Some of that is shifted out of the admin line. Remember, it cut the 3,200 out of,
Wait, so this is K2?
yes.
So that's not Ferry Beach, right?
No, Ferry Beach is the classroom program. Ferry Beach does classroom programs from K to 5.
Oh, I wasn't aware of
And then
that.
the
I
sixth
was
grade
thinking
is a
it's
trip. No, it goes all the way through. So in K to 5, there are at least 2 lessons. One is at the school, one is off-site. And that helps cover the cost of those, the K to 5 program. So the 6th grade program wouldn't be included in there.
You may see that program referred to as the ecology school.
Sure,
So that's the some of the
okay.
CADA.
So any
Yes.
sort of enrichment that you pay for someone to come in would go under that
Yeah.
line.
Okay. And then the other question I had just on the line, and
Sure.
maybe I'm just not thinking about this the right way. If it was $0.15, it's $5,016, which is a $5,000 increase. That's not a 0% increase.
Right, the difference would be different.
Oh, it's
Because there's no because there's no starting point, it can't say, I mean, it
It's
would,
not dividing,
yeah, it's probably not
It should be
the,
100%.
it should be 100%,
Right,
yeah.
yes,
It's
right,
probably not
right.
figuring out, it can't figure out what to do with that.
Yeah.
And I would say that, most of that increase you're seeing is the increases in the Ferry Beach.
Yeah.
So you're right, it's not, like Rick took, I don't know what it was, $1,000-something out of his lines to shift them down.
Right.
But you're seeing a $1,000 increase in the 4 to 6, and you're also seeing the increase in K to 2 because
So
those.
part of it's a shift and part of it's a
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
And we've had the ecology school for the K-5 for years, and basically their curriculum spirals, and then 6th grade is that culminating event where they spend the 3 days there.
Right.
So it's
Oh, I
a
was there
big
the
part.
first year in the
Yeah.
snowstorm.
Oh, my gosh.
The blizzard that came in April?
That was an experience.
Okay, so the next line, employee training and development, again, it's under the K to 2, so it's different. And that's cut back a little bit, and again, we're hoping for, to be able to utilize some Title II funding and the fact that Wednesdays help. Employee travel, so that was a line that we didn't have, we only had a 3 to 6 line.
Yeah, so that's a new line for K2.
That's a new line for K to 2, yep.
And that would be if teachers go to a conference and we need to pay their mileage to and from, so.
Is this also if they travel, like from school to school,
Yes.
Well, there
Well,
would
any-
be some,
Yeah.
yes.
right, any travel?
Yeah, it's really the only, it's the only travel reimbursement line that we have, so,
Right.
yeah. Instructional supplies, again, that's the K to 2, there's not a whole lot of difference there. Books, we trim back again, we trim back the books in there. Like I said, that was the teacher for their classroom libraries. Ed tech benefits in the 4-year-old program. You like that 1,013%? Again, that was a staff change. We had an ed tech that didn't take any benefits, and now we have an ed tech that does take family benefits. So that makes a huge difference there. Instructional supplies for the 4-year-old program. Again, this is our 2nd year now of that additional half-time pre-K, so we don't need as much, as we expanded the program and there's a whole new group of kids couldn't really share everything, had to have your own stuff, and now they're pretty settled in. And then again, cut the book money a little bit for them as well. So bottom line, as you can see, so that's a 2% increase from last year. When we think about, the increase in salaries, that I'm looking at, a little better than a 5% increase in salaries, overall 2% increase is actually a decrease in a lot of the supplies and those kind of things. So
Well, and if you're 58,000 net increase, 24,000 of that is the laptop cart, right?
right.
So,
Well, and
But we
Rick has a little
also-
bit,
yes.
yeah, he has a little buffer from like what you're going to see in Minnet, because he had $100,000 going to a charter school, which
Oh,
is not.
right.
So
yes. Right, I mean,
again,
it's net
it
out
wouldn't,
against everything else.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't, it still is, he's done a great job after, the reviews that we've done as administrative team, really trying to keep those increases low. But, you'll see in Minnet, the salaries really do impact the bottom line because she doesn't have any savings from
Got
the
it.
charter schools.
I have a question. In terms of making cuts in classroom libraries, I mean, I'm thinking about that, something that really impacts literacy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would just like, why did you choose that one? Are teachers feeling like their classroom libraries are adequate?
The last couple of years, we've had $200 a teacher to support their classroom libraries. So I guess part of it is feeling like the libraries, their classroom libraries, are a little better established than they were. And right now we're figuring $100 a teacher, but the reality may be that that looks a little bit different in practice. That maybe established teachers only get like 50, and that it's the new staff that get 150, or that we find a way to better support the new teachers. But books do need to be replaced, but they generally last a while when you've got them. So that's what it is. If we can build up the libraries and have them, and again, there is some money in there for those multiple copies of books, so that like reading strategy groups, they'll still be able to borrow that from our the school book room, which is where those are housed.
And speaking to that, Mary, you're right. I think we've made some pretty deep cuts over the years, and it hurts. And we don't feel great about some of our lines. It's hard to cut your professional development lines. We don't know what our amount that will come in Title II. We're hoping it's the same next year and we can access that for professional development. But it's really trying to think, what can we sacrifice a little bit now to get some of those other priorities in the strategic plan that won't hurt instruction too much. And it does depend on the teacher. If you're doing the book clubs and things like that, a lot of teachers will have amazing classroom libraries, and then you'll go into a new teacher's classroom and there'll be a bookshelf this big with books, and we say that's where all the money needs to go to make sure our new teachers have the resources. If our teachers who have been once you've been teaching 10 or 15 years, you usually get a really pretty nice library built up. But we have made some cuts that none of us felt overly happy with.
And I think again, to that same point, new teachers are obviously, they're lower on the scale, so they have less money, disposable money that they would spend of their own to support those classroom libraries. And I do think it takes a while for a teacher to develop those yard sailing skills of finding all those books. Generally a more veteran staff, they've got that down, so they know how to supplement their library at a lower cost, and they have a little more money to do so with. Whereas the young teachers are really the ones that need, or newer teachers, they don't have to be young, newer teachers need more of that support.
Is there ever any opportunity to buy collectively? Like, instead of sort of seeking out each individual teacher trying to get whatever books, thinking about like if you had almost like a contract kind of thing, and you can negotiate prices so they get better deals.
Yeah.
I don't know if that exists or if that's anything.
We probably don't have the staffing to organize and work something like that out, and we're probably not buying enough to make you know, I've never kind of, Barnes and Nobles gives you 20%, educators, and most people, I think, do that. And the other thing is that the book clubs that we, teachers will send out is every person who, or child who buys a book, you get free points for books for the classroom. So when I was a teacher, I always would encourage parents, I said, if you're going to buy books at the store, if you shift that to our book clubs, we're getting free books every time you do. And I got a lot of books that way for the classroom because parents were buying books for their children. So there are a lot of ways to do it inexpensively, but other than Barnes and Noble's at 20% for educators, there's
And the Scholastic Book Club
Yeah.
really do have some good buy one, get one.
Good, and, all right, so then the last page, once we get down the budget, right, there's one more page that has cuts and priority on it. So these are things that, in terms of the cuts, these are things that either we just never made it into the budget, they were thoughts, or they were things that Tina said we really need to trim that down. So we made some cuts there. So going down through there, again, Tina mentioned the EPS, the essential programs and services that the state recommends. They recommend a ratio of school counselor to students as 350 to 1. So we have 487. So we are understaffed in our school counselor. But it was more important that we had that equitable situation that Minot and Elm Street have a school counselor at all before PCS worries about expanding that. So I took that right off the table. Our employee training and development, we had looked at trying to send some of our staff to Teachers College to support writing instruction, and we took that out, as well as the other cuts that we made in training and development, and hoping to expand some of that into Title II and utilize our Wednesday time around that. Some playground repairs. Our playground's getting old. I've had to invest probably around $5,000 a year the last 2 years in replacement parts. They're out of warranty, so I'm replacing stuff. But again, that was something that I pulled off the table for the time being, and we'll try to make sure that that remains covered. You know, we replace what we really have to, rather than think about, you know, I guess wholesale replacement.
So these cuts are things that were on your priority list that you cut out. They weren't
Right.
in the budget from last year.
No, they were,
It's not
well,
cut from like the previous
No.
budget.
This was
Right.
what the principals did first is they said, what do I feel like we need at our school?
Right.
And then we came together and said, okay, you need a lot of things. We're not going to be able to get all of these. What are our biggest priorities? And how does that match the strategic plan? So we went down through as an A team and spent a lot of time saying, these ones aren't making the cut. You know, they're not going to come onto the table because we wanted to make sure what we presented to you were things that we felt were essential.
Right.
So, but we also, this is where that transparency comes in. I didn't want the principals to feel like what they felt like they needed you wouldn't hear it at all. You know, I wanted you to hear that there were some tough decisions made that came at our level.
So these are things that are cut from the needs list rather than cut
Yes.
from the budget.
Yes,
Right.
they're cut, exactly, good way to put that.
right. But instructional supplies and books were things.
Oh, that's
those
true,
are
yes.
numbers
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
down, those
Yeah.
last two.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, so you
Some of
did
them.
cut some, but it wasn't
Books were
a
added.
bad amount, you know, it was a
Right.
couple
Right.
hundred cut out
Yeah.
of books, but you would have liked to have spent $3,000 more.
Right.
Just a question around playground, sort of related to this. Do you have a separate playground for your pre-K, or do they utilize the?
They use the same playground. We just limit their access to what equipment they go on. Yeah, there are pieces of the equipment that are just, they're too big of steps and too difficult for them to manage. So we have 4, I don't know how to describe them, those little toys on the big spring. So those are just for our pre-K kids. And there are a few things that they can utilize that still out there, but for the most
They
part,
have access to
they're
it.
happy to run in circles.
Yeah.
They're 4.
They don't need a lot of equipment.
Wood chips are good for 4-year-olds. So So then the priority pieces, just trying to continue down through there. So like we said, our kindergarten has 69 kids in it. So a couple reasons to include this, our strategic plan. You know, A1C talks about equal opportunity for our kids. You know, if I have a first grade with 23 kids in it, in every first grade versus, you know, if the other schools are having 15, that's not really an equitable experience. And then, you know, that, again, the resource allocation, targeting our needy kids. We saw the impact, and I know anybody that was on the board last year when we added the 4th grade, part of the reason why we had to add the 4th grade teacher, our 3rd grade, there were 2 classes of 25 and 1 of 24. They had been that way all the way up through since kindergarten, and they were our lowest scoring group on any of our assessments. So we only had 57% of those kids making standard in reading, when as a school we were 70%. So that means all those other classes were well above 70. So it was a challenge, and we saw the impact of that. We don't want to see that impact again.
And the cost of catching kids up when they get to 4th grade is significant compared to making sure they're not getting that far behind. So we certainly don't want a class of, you know, K1, 2 to be really high. It would be better to have or easier to have a 4th, 5th, or 6th with a higher number, but early intervention we know is so important.
And Rick, just to make sure I understand, so I assume that the math here is that right now there are 3 first grade teachers, right? So the 69
Correct.
kids would be 23, so if you added a teacher, there would then be 17 or 18 kids per classroom?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
Instead of
I
the
have,
23.
sorry, that's good, because probably everybody didn't know that. I have 4 kindergarten teachers, so in making that shift into 1st grade, that would increase those class sizes quite a bit. So that's why we would want to. So right now we have like 17 a class in kindergarten.
Yes,
Which is still,
17's
yeah,
a lot, yeah.
It's still high. And the state restricts you in your pre-K program. You have to have 2 adults for 16 children, and that's your maximum size for pre-K. You know, so then you go into a kindergarten class with more kids and 1 less adult. But our teachers do a really good job with it, and you know, we seem to manage that. So. So the second thing is special education teacher, and again, Holly will touch more on this, but our special ed teachers at PCS carry the largest caseloads across the district. You know, bigger school, we have, you know, more kids, more needs. So, you know, some time ago, we lost one of the special ed teachers at PCS when 7th and 8th grade from Minot and Mechanic Falls started attending Whittier. One of the staff from PCS was sent over there, and that just never got replaced. So I think that's part of why we struggle still with those numbers. Math text is a big chunk of money.
And this is just for, the 40,000 is just for PCS?
Is
so
just
there'll be- there
PCS
will
this
be
year,
an
yeah.
additional amount for the other
Right,
schools.
you will see that in the other schools as well. So our current text is a 2007 edition, isn't aligned with the Common Core. In order to make sure that we would do that work, we could have our teachers work through that process and pull out units and insert units to try and make it align. But that's a lot of time and work when we're at a point where we're considering a new text for math anyway. We haven't made a decision about what that text is, but we know that it's going to cost us right around 40,000, right around 80,000 as a district to have a new math program for our K to 6.
And for that work, it would take for the principals to align the outdated curriculum to the new standards. It would take a lot of time and effort when there are already programs out there that have already done that.
And the other thing I didn't mention on there, I don't think I mentioned on there, is most of the time when you get a new program, part of what's included in there is professional development. So they send people to you to help you do a better job of, you know.
Includes the training.
Yeah, it includes training. Thank you. Brain cramp. Okay, and then the last thing on there, again, as a priority is, I know I already have one laptop card in there, but PCS does have, and Linda will probably touch more on this, but PCS does have the older equipment and the larger student numbers. So really to put us up to, to get by, one cart we need to get by. A second cart would definitely help equal the playing field across the schools. And that's it.
So how many carts do you have now and how old are they?
We have 4 carts. All of them are at minimum the MLTI machines that came off. So they're 5 years old right now.
Okay.
And
So they were used for 4 years by the middle school or high school students prior to coming to us.
And Linda, in her presentation, she's going to go over all of the details
6 years
about-
old, sorry.
Yeah.
They're 6 years old.
And I have just a quick question. And these numbers are not in this previous budget that we just
No.
looked at?
That's
Nope.
correct.
Nope, those are all things that are on there that, and I think they'll, across the board, all of us will have some things that are on there as a priority, but, we wanted to start with a maintenance of effort. What are we doing right now? And then talk about these things that we see as real needs for the district and building.
And one of the things, if you haven't seen Kim Brandt, we're going to start like a running list of the budget priorities so that as we go through all of these weeks of presentations, you'll be able to see not only the academic priorities, but also the capital improvement, priorities, so we'll have a running list that we will then have to talk about, and we'll try to keep that up to date so that you have a visual on the wall as we go through them all.
And so, Leo, part of your question too, we do have in our current budgets for math, replacement workbooks, replacement pieces to our current math program that we would not have to reorder if that went through. I mean, it's certainly not $40,000, $20,000, but there would be small amounts that would, yes, some savings.
So, I'm wondering if people need just a 4 or 5 minute break and then start right in with Ryan's presentation. And like I said, Ryan's and Kim